So, as Nick said, I'm a photographer, and I've been doing photography professionally for about 12 years, largely photographing women, moms, business ladies, grandmas, you name it. And most women, like 98% of them, there's always a conversation about how they look and what they don't like about themselves and what they're self-conscious about. And it's present in pretty much every woman I've photographed. And it's almost like the conversation of self-deprecation is kind of cool. Like we can commiserate about what we hate about ourselves. And so when I photograph people, I use Photoshop to remove distractions. And I have to remove everything that a woman hates about herself before she'll look into her own eyes. And that, to me, was like part of my job. Like, what do I have to do so that this woman will see how beautiful she is and will actually look at her own face? I'll have to slim an arm of a perfectly slender girl so she doesn't look at it, so she'll just look at her eyes. And part of the reason is that we are constantly comparing ourselves to women that are in magazines. Women we know aren't real, right? We know intellectually that these women are photoshopped and they're not real, but we compare ourselves to them because that's what we do. I thought all of this was normal, part of like the structure of a woman, until I met Allie, who's my stepdaughter, and she was 13, and she didn't have any of this going on. I point a camera at her and I get this. And she thinks it's awesome. And she'd see a goofy photo of herself and be like, oh, that's so funny, can I put it on Facebook? And I was like, wow. It dawned on me that I was not going to be responsible for changing that conversation in her head. I was not going to teach her my conversation of self-hate. Because for women, our sense of worth is inextricably tied to our sense of beauty. It really has nothing to do with what we actually look like, just how we feel about what we look like. And yet, we continue to work on what we look like, because we think that if we look different, then we'll feel better about ourselves. And so there's a cosmetic industry and a beauty industry around this. And don't get me wrong, I think makeup's awesome. Like, I think it's a lot of fun colors, and it's pretty, and it's fun. But if you're approaching it from the angle of fun, that's great. If you're approaching it from trying to change something so that you'll feel better about yourself, is where there's a problem. And that's why we also have this cosmetic surgery industry, because we're measuring the wrong things. We're measuring our beauty based on the scale, or the number inside of our pants, or the number inside of our bras. And they're all the wrong metrics, so we can never actually attain our own definition of beauty. So here's what we got. We've got that it's kind of cool to be self-deprecative. We love to hate the media, but we spend our money with it. We compare ourselves to people we know who are not real. And we intellectually know that beauty comes from within. We always talk about, well, beauty comes from within. But it makes no difference. Why does knowing this make no difference? And this is why those Dove commercials for real beauty drive me nuts. Because we know, we already know, but it doesn't make any difference. And the reason it makes no difference is because we're scared. And if you intellectually know something, but there's fear behind it, it doesn't matter what you intellectually know. And the truth is we're scared of being ugly because we know in our hearts that beauty is power. We know that people who are pretty make more money, talk their way out of tickets, get bought drinks, have more dates. So, we want to be beautiful. We're also confused about beauty, super confused about beauty, because while we know that it comes from within, it seems to show up on the outside. So we get to working on the outside. We're also confused because we know that beauty is power, but if you work too hard on being beautiful, you're vain. So, what do you do? The first thing you do is get present to the impact of the self-hate habit, right? This conversation that goes on in our heads, we're passing it on to our children. We're invalidating the people who love us and think we're beautiful. I mean, we're basically telling them they're wrong. And we're perpetuating this culture. I mean, who do you think our culture is? It's us. It's where we spend our money. And usually with any addiction, which this self-critical habit is an addiction of buying makeup and using it and hating yourselves and buying different makeup, there's always a payoff with any addiction. And I feel like uncomfortable with the slide up there. I mean, who do you get to blame? Who do you get to make wrong? How do you get to justify your like cupcake habit because, it's not great anyway. And then the second thing is to get straight about where beauty does come from, to get unconfused about this situation because it's kind of a mess. No matter who you've talked to or who they've studied across cultures and ages, there are 3 standards of beauty that are universal: clear skin, facial symmetry, and a 75% waist-to-hip ratio. These also happen to be predictors of health or features of health. So the waist-to-hip ratio thing is cool because it doesn't matter what you weigh as long as your waist is smaller than your hips. Notice that there's nothing about boobs on here. There's nothing about like butt size, right? It's just a waist-to-hip ratio. It's not even an hourglass figure. And it also happens that when women have an 80% or higher waist-to-hip ratio, they are more likely to have a host of illnesses. So it's actually health. Beauty is actually tied to health. And this is where beauty actually comes from. This slide you should totally emblazon in your brain, because how I feel about myself feeds into how I take care of myself, and how I take care of myself feeds how I feel about myself. And if you go around this circle enough times, you're going to be beautiful, even if you try not to be. You're going to be beautiful, and it's going to shine out your eyes. So you have to identify the voice in your head. Who's whispering in your ear and telling you that you're wrong? Who's whispering in your ear and telling you there's something wrong with you? When you look in the mirror and you're like, this thing right here, this is wrong. Nobody else looks at you that way. And then you have to look yourself in the eye. And this is not putting on mascara. This is actually looking yourself in the eye. And in the mirror, looking at yourself in the eye. Khalil Gibran said that beauty is eternity gazing at itself in the mirror. You can do that. Just look yourself in the eye. And then the last thing is to practice some gratitude. You have this amazing instrument called a body. And you want to nitpick about like little details about it, but think of all the things you can do. I mean, I don't care what you think about your butt, but those chairs would be so much less comfortable if you didn't have one. And then you create your own images. So whatever you think about the media, they're just out to spend money. If putting skinny girls on magazines didn't make money, they wouldn't do it. In the meantime, you can create your own images of the people you love and yourself, and you can't have the conversation of self-hate when you look at this, right? And then you can't help but be beautiful. Thank you.